Hey there! Today I'm sharing a do-it-yourself shadow box card using Fawn's Wild for You stamp set. I already had these pre-colored images in my stash, so they were ready to be used and put onto a card. And for this card, I wanted to create a safari-esque theme where all the animals are hanging out. So I have a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock cut at 4¼ and 6½ inches. And since I wanted to create a sunset scene, I used these three distress ink colors: fossilized amber, carved pumpkin, and fired birk. And as you can see, it takes a really long time to blend out these colors, but the smoothness of the paper also helps. And I'll go over the colors multiple times until it's blended and as dark as I want it to look. And it just takes a bit of time and a little bit of practice, but once you get it, the color for backgrounds using distress inks always turns out to be really pretty. And I also decided that I didn't want the background to look super flat, so I used a bit of water on an acrylic block, splattering it everywhere, and I'll use a paper towel to pick up the color, and I'll do it again until it looks how I want it to look. Using Fawn's Grassy Hill dies, I cut out 3 different variants of grass, and I'll add a bit of mowed lawn distress ink on the edges to give it a bit of dimension so it doesn't look super flat either. And once I'm done adding the color to the edges, I'll die cut out some birch trees, and I'll do the exact same thing where I add a little bit of color to the edge to give the trees a little bit of dimension as well. Once I have everything ready, I score the background at 1½ inch on each side, and I'll add one of the grassy hills directly onto the background and make sure that it's scored along with the card as well. And for me, when I put together a card, I like to plan out where I want everything to be before I commit and glue it down. And I usually run into issues if I glue something down and want to move it, especially on a distress ink background, because usually the glue or the adhesive I'm using will pick up the color and it'll ruin the background. So for this particular card, I'm using multimedia matte glue to glue these birch trees down. And since they're not completely solid and they have little nooks in them, if any glue were to squeeze out, it'll dry clear and no one will notice. So once all the birch trees are placed onto the card, there are some pieces that are hanging off the card. So I'll just turn it over and cut them all off. You can now see that the 3 sides of this shadow box is complete, and all we have to do is add the front of the box down, which is comprised of the grassy hills. I'll trim down the 2 remaining grassy hill pieces to about 4½ inches. And I'll also trim down the length of each piece so that each layer is staggered and you can see all of them when you look into the card. The card width, when open, is about 4 inches wide. So the scored area for the grassy hill is about 1/4 inch. And I'll use that to adhere to the side of the box, so when you open it up, it has these layers. And the last piece is the one with the sentiment. So I'll stamp that onto the sentiment and adhere it to the shadow box. And this layer is actually the 4th side of this shadow box. So once I'm done with that, I'll play around with all the animals to see where I want them to be in this card. And I'll use a Xyron sticker maker for the animals that will be directly on the background. I tend to use a sticker maker pretty often because it makes things easy. And the only little trick that I have is that I'll use a bone folder to press it down on the adhesive and use the pointy side of the bone folder to go around the edges so there's no stickiness on the side when you peel it off. So it's a really quick sticker maker, and it makes things easy because you could just go ahead and add it on. And you'll see that I actually move the elephants around. If you don't press on too hard, you can reposition these images. But once you press it down, it'll be stuck on for good. And for the rest of the animals that will be actually on the grassy hills, I'll add score tape to the very bottom and add them onto the box. So there you go. I personally don't have a shadow box die, but I find it pretty easy to create my own, and so hopefully you can too. I think this card came out pretty cute, and I really like all the little layers where the animals are hanging out. Well, have a great day, and thanks for stopping by.